Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Watier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Watier, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation. My wife asked me the other day, she's like, you ever going to change like what you say on the podcast? I'm like, no, it's worked.
Why would I do that?
Why would I do that? She's like, I can hear you. And I was like, good, you're listening, because before you weren't. So this is great.
Yeah.
So welcome in. If you're new to the episode, if you're new to us, if you want to learn more about our story and how fasting has transformed our lives, head back to episode 1. We'll lay it out on the table, peek behind the curtain. You'll know who we are and why we do what we do. It has now evolved into 230 plus episodes, coaching programs, free resources, support, challenges, because we want to take on the obesity and diabetes epidemic and blood sugar epidemic that we have in this lifestyle-induced issue that we have specifically here in the States, but now worldwide as well. So one fast at a time, one person at a time, one transformation at a time, one episode at a time, one action step at a time.
One meal at a time when you break your fast.
One meal at a time. We want to walk this out with you and adopt a fasting lifestyle. So welcome into the new listeners. If you're an OG, a long-term listener, we appreciate you continuing to come back and allow us to be part of your fasting lifestyle. Yeah. Tommy, I want to give a shout out as we had a really cool review that came in, and then we'll get into today's conversation.
Okay.
And we're going to do a listener Q&A. So we promised, we got away from it for a little while. And it's not that we had a lack of questions. We get dozens and dozens of messages a week. And we get lots of questions in our Facebook community, in our coaching group. But we like to kind of put them together in a delivery that will touch multiple different situations under each question, right? So we can get the most reach, with answering one or two of the questions, right? So when we're looking at the questions today, it's been about a month, maybe a month and a half since we did a last Q&A. So we're going to be delivering these to you probably about in that every 4 to 6 week range. And this last 5-star review, which is of course our favorite kind, comes in from Tia Sear, TSCYR. I've been listening to the Fasting for Life podcast for some time, and I absolutely love all they have to say. Love what they say. Is also backed by research. Yes, no need to nerd out like we like to do, but we do like to bring you the best and most current information that we possibly can. So if you are up for it, we'd absolutely love and appreciate a review, subscribe, follow, download, whatever the new operating system says.
Yeah, hit the buttons.
Yeah, hit the buttons. Click all the buttons. Unclick them, re-click them, whatever you got to do, because we truly appreciate you following and giving us a shot and listening in as we walk out this fasting lifestyle. So, Tommy, let's talk about some questions. So,
let's go.
Let's start with, I love this one. This comes in from Jenna, and it says, support as I attempt to dodge some emotional issues with eating. So, life stress, right? Emotional things, stress response. What am I going to do? Go to food, right? Speaking from personal experience. And in this situation, she is very close to her goal weight. So
nice.
The support she's asking for is crossing the goal line. Well, I'm going to push back on that thought in just a second. Perspective shift. And she said, I'm weighing about 154 right now, aiming for 146. Can't seem to make it.
Not yet.
So, first of all, I've never climbed Mount Everest or any mountain higher than 14,000 feet, which is Pikes Peak out in Colorado. But
Beautiful.
I can tell you that once you get above the tree line and you get that last, 1,000 feet or so, 2,000 feet or so, that was not the easiest part of the climb.
Yeah.
That was the hardest. And I can't imagine summiting something like Everest or K2 or any of those incredibly amazing feats that people do. Mm-hmm. So as we get closer to the goal, I want to start this conversation looking at the tools that you used to get you to where you are now are the same tools, but applied in a different way to get you to maintenance, and then maintaining that change and adopting this lifestyle. And that's what the research shows, is that most people give back the results at that 2 to 3 year mark. 95% of the weight you've lost and the health you've gained starts to revert in the opposite direction. So here's where I want to lean into, and then I'm going to tee up. Okay. Is if we want to finish crossing the goal line, in our brain, our result-based thinking is saying, all right, that's my goal. I've made it. Mm-hmm. I've reached the mountaintop. Well, guess what? When we got to the top of Pikes Peak, I still had to climb down.
You didn't just like barrel roll down?
There was no, what are those things? Not pergolas. Those are the things out back that are supposed to give you shade that are pretty useless in my opinion. Yeah, like a lift, or there wasn't a train to take us down.
Yeah. So not just a big slide down the back of the mountain.
Oh, that would have been amazing. So you want to reach your goal, right? And we've done the Manitou Incline out in Colorado Springs as well, which is 70% incline, and it's like 1,300 steps up to the top of.
Wow.
It's crazy. Incredible.
That's cool.
Did it 5 or 6 years in a row. Each year getting passed by grandmas and grandpas with their ski poles, just trucking up the mountain.
Really?
But every year we shaved some time off. First year was like way too long. Finally got it under an hour, then got it down to like 40. I think my best time was like 45 or 48 minutes.
Dang, that's cool.
And there are people just, locals blowing by me with their ski poles. Just
they do it every day.
30 years my senior. I'm like, okay. So this concept of finishing to cross the goal line, we want to shift our mindset there, that once we get there, it's not I'll be happy when, or yes, we want to reach our goals, right? We want to commit and stick to the plan and why we want to get there, right? We want to have a strong why that anchors us. But the skill set that you use with your fasting lifestyle to get you there is the same skills, but applied in a different way to once and for all get through those last 3 to 5, 6 to 8 pounds, but then ultimately keep you there as well.
I love that you started that off with the fact that it's those last couple thousand feet of the climb aren't easier. They're harder. They're harder for so many reasons. You've already done a lot of the work. You're tired. You're tired of thinking about the same steps or the same goal over and over again. But also, the environment gets a little bit tougher too. There's less margin of error, and the same thing happens with our physiology. There's less margin of error. It's harder to maintain a caloric deficit, if you're familiar with that concept, calories in, calories out, right? Like your margin of error gets smaller because as you're a smaller version of yourself, you're actually burning through less calories at rest, which means that your rate of losing weight, even in a caloric deficit, is going to go down. It's going to become slower. But then you have multiple other physiological factors and psychological ones as well. We have fasting fatigue, fasting frustration. We also have the fact that, your food choices matter, and your comfort zone matters too, because it's easy to get more comfortable as the energy comes up, as the weights kind of come off, and you've made a lot of good progress. It can get easy to get comfortable with where you are now and lose some of your urgency too. So I like to think about this is such a multi-layered question, and I appreciate it, Jana. And so I'm going to say, what if you took that last 8 pounds, which can seem like a relatively small number, especially if you had 20, 30, 50 or more to lose when you started. Now it's only 8, quote unquote, only 8. What if you took that, and what if you said every 1/10 of a pound or every 2/10 of a pound was actually now the goal? So if it was every 1/10 of a pound, now there's 80 tenths of a pound that you have to lose. And so now whenever you jump onto the scale, if you saw it move 0.3 or 0.4, that's multiple steps of wins right there that you can track in a little more of a granular fashion, rather than hey, it's 8 pounds, so it might be +1 over here, -1 over here. It's kind of easy to sweep under the rug subconsciously. And if that's what's happening, then I like to kind of blow up the number a little bit so we can kind of zoom in the focus. But then I'm also going to ask about food choices too, because if your food choices are varying whenever you go to break your fast, those lead to volatility on the scale as well. And especially when there's only 8 pounds to go, plus 0.4, 0.6, minus 0.4, 0.6 can kind of erase some of the short term, progress that you're making, even with really good fasting, right?
I love that point that you just made about the food choices,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, my wife is a tracker, a calorie counter, a macroer, a CrossFitter, marathon. There's lots of things that I don't love or do. So we're like Jekyll and Hyde in terms of how we get results, right?
Yeah.
But she gets results, and it works for her. And she doesn't get to a new low or to new body composition or to a new, level of zone output on her Peloton zone training and challenges, which I do also, which I actually love and enjoy.
Mm.
Don't, if you're listening, you're probably not, but don't tell her if you know her that she was right, that I would like it. And she knew. But the reality
They always
is,
know.
right, they always know. She dials it in and the result shows up, right?
Mm.
So dialing it in is this concept of, Tommy, you just broke it down in terms of a scale, but also
Mm.
like your day-to-day decisions and your day-to-day habits. So you're going to apply your skills a little bit differently when you get closer to maintenance, right?
Yeah.
And this concept, this comes from Dr. Lane Norton, BioLane on Instagram.
Mm.
I'm not saying we're polar opposites in how we approach diet and weight loss. There's a lot of overlap in things. I'd say we agree on 80% of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But he has this concept of the diet after the diet, right? So it's like, what do you do when you get to your goal? Or maybe you got there and maybe you don't. So, getting on that process, you might have had an easy time on the path or had it not so easy.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, it's no small matter. You're also not done. So, to your point, if there was a time to get complacent, now wouldn't be it.
Yeah.
Right. So, dialing it in, when my wife dials it in, she's then like, look, before and after, she's like, look, I can see the change.
Mm.
Right. So, you're now in a situation where you can veer off on a few different paths. One path is to go back to the 95% of fasters / dieters who gain their weight back and then some. Or the other would be to take a break from the air quotes grind, right? If you've been really white knuckling it and kind of trying to really force it to the top of the mountain, so to speak, right? And really push that down to that goal weight.
Yeah.
Or might be time to hang out for a bit and maintain your newfound but incredibly beneficial changes.
Mm.
So the
Figure
latter
out how
two
to do that.
paths,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, the latter two paths are obviously a better option. Like, we want you to adopt a lifestyle that gets you to that 5%. But here are the two questions that I would ask. If you've lost a decent amount of weight, then there's a chance that to your point, Tommy, that your plate should look different.
Yeah.
In size, number one, and choices, probably number two. Because your body has a set point. It's going to remember. If you've lost 50 pounds, your body needs a lot less energy. So your metabolic function, your calorie burn every day is going to be a lot less.
Yeah. But you don't forget what those old plates looked and felt like,
right,
and how long they were satisfying for, right? Like,
right.
It took a lot longer to eat, 2,000 calories versus, 1,600 calories. And even if you don't track these things, that doesn't leave you. That old habits can die hard, especially if you're making your plate and you're used to going for 2 servings of something, and now you kind of have to cut that but like something. I need the fuel to be less here, right? Overall.
Yeah, my dad's lost 60 pounds, reversed his type 2 diabetes at 30 years, come off 120 units of insulin and 17 other medications. His last
Incredible.
20% is in his second plate, in his portion.
Right.
And in his non-exercise activity in his activity level. And just go walk. He just won't do it. He's so stubborn. Love you, Dad, if you're listening. Proud of you for doing it. because not many people in their 70s make a change that you did. And I'm so glad you did, because now you get to see your grandkids, because you were literally falling asleep at the dinner table and dying in front of us. So
Wow.
kudos to you for seeing the writing on the wall and making a change. And thank you, Mom, for supporting him along the way, because God knows I couldn't have done it without you.
And so there were amazing results 80% of the way towards the original goal weight.
And he's like, now I'm 74. I feel great. I got enough energy. It's fine. I'm good. I'm good where I'm at. I'm like, okay. All right. Right. So here are the two questions when you get there to wherever this point is. Janice's point, my dad's point, right? Is am I happy with how I'm eating / fasting in the context of my lifestyle right now? And can I keep doing what I'm doing? Can I keep living this way, so to speak? And if the answer to both those questions is yes, then it's a simple solution. You need to figure out how to maintain these changes, right? By adapting the same skill set. And I think the biggest lever you can pull, Tommy, is we call it momentary maintenance. It's to stay here for a while, try it on for size, is simplify your plate structure. Right? Dial it in. I ate the same meal for like 2 weeks recently. It was amylou, gluten-free, dairy, these chicken crumbles, and it was incredible. And then these little pizza wisps, right, from Costco, and then a couple tablespoons of sour cream. Like, this was my meal. Each box would last me 2 days, because I was doing 2 meals a day, sometimes 1 meal a day, but I was splitting it up, and it was like the same thing I was eating. And it was so freeing, and I still crave it to now recording this episode. They were out of stock, and then it didn't get reordered on our Instacart order and whatnot. But the reality is, it's like where you are now, your end goal isn't going to look the same as your starting point. So the easiest thing you can do now to dial it in is 2 things. One is simplify your plate, right? Pick a few meals, stay consistent for 2 to 4 weeks with it, really dial it in and remove the decision fatigue around it. And then find a fasting window that allows you to make that decision easy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. While you're observing control over the scale.
Yes.
And less scale volatility, right? And then that takes the pressure off. This is why we call it momentary maintenance, because it's not letting go of that 146. It's not letting go of that original goal or what's important to you, but it's giving yourself a little bit of time so you can evaluate your strategy right now. How does your body respond to it? Take a look at your cravings and your food choices when the pressure is off from just wanting the scale to reward you every single day, because you get so hyper focused, especially on those last few pounds, because they are slower. And there's a lot of reasons, behind those, behind plateaus or momentary maintenance points where the scale like significantly slows down. So taking stock of all of these things can be just the re-energizing and remotivating, phase that you need to not only gain confidence in your methods for maintaining, and then for your self-image to adjust to this weight too, especially if it's just been like a downward slope for a while, like you've taken off significant weight. That can be part of the process as well.
Yeah, 100%. So I really appreciate this, because it's a question that we get a lot. And I'll say, for the folks that we've coached through maintenance and that have made it to maintenance, and most recently I'd been at momentary maintenance for a while until I decided to do a longer fast. And then you're really focusing on my visceral fat, right? Trying to get, that's my target number right now. So my target has changed. The scale for me, that number, the original number that I picked, that was before I did a DEXA scan and knew that I had 160 plus pounds of lean muscle tissue on my body. So like, I'm never, by my height, 5'9" on a good day, I'm never going to be in that healthy, ideal BMI chart, right? And if you've been around Fasting for Life podcast long enough, you know that the BMI chart, we're not a big fan. We like waist to height ratio, insulin score, insulin assessment, labs. If you want to go check out the website, we've got an insulin assessment that teaches you how to measure your waist and waist height ratio, and how that's much bigger indicator of insulin resistance and cardiometabolic issues and diabetes and all that stuff. But the point here is that dialing it in terms of, looking at that end goal, this is where we start to have the conversation about, lifestyle, like those two questions can you keep living this way? And are you happy with where you're at? Well, we need to apply the skills a little bit differently to really hone in and push through that last little bit. And it might not be the time, right? It might be time to hang out for a little while. So I love this question because there are so many other layers and like sub conversations that come along with it. Like right when the first thing I picked up was finish the goal, get across the goal line. It's like, okay, great.
Yeah.
But now what? Right. So you can, and we see this in our coaching group, you can get the last 5 to 6 or 8 to 10 pounds off. Right. We just need to hone in and dial it in, as my wife would say. When I dial it in, I see the result. Okay, great. Dial it in. Well, that's not so easy. And that's why we just talked through all those different caveats that we just went through, right?
Yeah. One other thing I heard you just highlight there was fasting impatience. We see a lot of fasting impatience because, when you're used to going down the diet track and not really seeing results, and then you stumble upon fasting, or, you just, however you got to fasting, immediately you can finally see some changes in the scale. And then, but the trouble is that it doesn't continue at that same pace. And that can be fasting impatience inducing, if you will. So kind of tempering that expectation. And, Jana, I don't think that's the case here for Jana, but it might be the
Agreed.
case for a lot of people listening.
Yeah. And that if you are the person, Jenna, who submitted this question, then yeah, all of those things, we're taking some liberties with your question. Of course, they may not apply to you, but they're talking points that we think are overall important. So let's look at the next question here. We had a question from Brian. Do you have any best practice suggestions for late day white knuckling period to prevent unplanned breaking of a fast? Does anybody relate I'm going to break my fast at 6 and you find yourself eating lunch at 12? Not me. Never done it. Right. Maybe a meditation routine, a mantra, or another routine. Recently, I've broken promises to myself and lost intention. So I'm seeking ideas to stay on track. So ultimately, closing his window and consistently keeping it closed.
And not breaking the plan early and breaking the fast earlier than was anticipated. So it sounds like Brian's trying to make sure he has some hours for some fat burning and not wanting to cut that short. And also the, making and setting and fulfilling a promise to yourself is something that's oftentimes kind of overlooked, but that's such an important part of the process here that it would be better for me to set a 16-hour promise to myself for my next fast and hit that out of the park rather than continuing to try to set, let's say, 24-hour fast or 36-hour fast and consistently not hit that mark, because each time you break that promise, you lose a little bit of confidence and trust in yourself. And this is an important thing to be building upon rather than like kind of draining from that during the fasting process, for sure.
There's 3 things that I personally relate to in this process, in this question, is I hear underlying this is lack of planning and or lack of excitement in what you're going to break your fast. So you have a loose plan, right? But you're not really excited about it, right? So, okay, well, we might be freelancing a little bit. We might be pivoting a little bit, right? Maybe. Another one I hear is, what decisions did you make to break what was your previous meal?
That's a good question.
What was your previous set of decisions that led you up to this one being difficult? Right? Because we know food choices, alcohol, sugar, those types of things, simple carbohydrates, late night snacking. Yeah. All that stuff can make the next fast more difficult.
Oh yeah. Incredibly so.
Right. And then the third thing, I'll put the 2 S's together, is sleep and stress. So when I find myself struggling and white knuckling, right, and doing things that are unplanned, well, I don't have a plan a lot of the times, or I'm expecting my willpower to just magically show up, right? A unicorn just arrives with some fairy dust and makes it happen.
Right.
Right.
Good choices follow.
Right. Or I've made some choices lately that don't serve my long-term goals, right, in terms of food or alcohol, which for me, alcohol isn't a component anymore, but thinking back earlier in the journey, and or the sleep stress cycle. So there's lots of little off-ramps we can take there, but white knuckling is okay short term. but we need to go upstream. Like, why is the white knuckling taking place? And that's why I went to those 3 different scenarios. I'm like, those are the things that I want to know more about with this question. So we can then put a plan together that addresses the cause of the issue, not the action, which is breaking the fast early or feeling like you're white knuckling or trying to keep your window closed when it should be closed.
True. So, speaking of going upstream and what was the cause of the issue, maybe the cause of the issue is some sort of midday physiological slump that you're experiencing that's really pushing you to break that fast earlier than anticipated. And it's not something you're having an easy time, obviously, just mentally overcoming or just going, no, that wasn't my plan. Maybe it's so tough physiologically and hormonally speaking, you're having hormone signals that you just really can't override, or you're having a lot of trouble overriding rather. So that could be a dip in salt levels. That could be a hydration issue. That could be a nutritional issue as well, as far as like, what was the last thing that you ate? How did you break your previous meal? And so if it could be craving induced. We talked recently about insulin and leptin and those cycles and how those are related. So any number of these things could be a factor. Might also be the macronutrient profile of your last meal. Was it sufficient in healthy fats and good proteins, or was it higher on the carbohydrate side that can make that next fast that much tougher? So I would be interested to know, blood sugar and ketone levels and how they're cycling here as well.
Yeah, and I mean that just depends on where you are in your fasting journey, right? So if you're new to fasting, then we don't want to continually play in the action, like trying to correct the action, right? Trying to correct the bad behavior. We want to figure out, wait a minute, why am I doing this, right? Like, but why? But why? So let's go upstream. Let's look at it. Like I always say, if you've listened long enough, my 5-year-old son, but why, Dad? But why? Now my 2-year-old's starting it. I'm like, oh my gosh. His thing is, you'll say something to him and he'll go, huh? I'm like, you just heard me. I go, huh? 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 I'm like, no more huh. Like you're doing the thing. Stop saying huh. Like it's so crazy. But think of it that way. It's like, wait a minute. What is upstream? So just some things to consider in terms of keeping those promises to yourself. And Tommy, I love it. You said this early on in the conversation, was like, pick a fasting window you can hit, you can do.
Yeah, that would be better.
Put a meal you're going to enjoy in. And I'm not talking about, the Little
Takeout
Caesars pizza, whatever, DoorDash extravaganza.
Right.
Man, my wife was out of town and I had the boys, and we went out and got stuck out with a storm, and we ended up in Target, and the last place I ever want to be, but somebody needed to use the bathroom, and it was pouring and storms are coming through, and I was like, oh my goodness. So I texted my wife and I was like, hey, can you, I'm going to order DoorDash for the boys. What do they normally get from Jersey Mike's? They've got some good options. You can get the bowl. You don't have to get the bread. My son's gluten sensitive. So anyway, I was like, fine, that's what he wanted. It's a yes weekend. I'll say yes to it. And then I realized I don't even have a DoorDash account. So I had to text my wife with my tail between my legs saying, hey, can you just order it for us? So not the DoorDash extravaganza of the Little Caesars, all you can eat, just send it on your way. But,
intentional choices. Right.
So, and then, just hit some singles for a while, right? To get back on track. And, think about that, but why question, huh? But why, huh? But why, huh? But why, but why, but why are you doing this? Why does this matter to you? Right.
Absolutely.
And I think it's going to be a great transition into the last question that came in, Tommy. And this one was from inside of our coaching group, and Redeema had a great question. And the framework was from like support and how to push to keep going. Right. So the word push there, I first of all, as we started this conversation, I was like, all right, you don't have to always be pushing. Okay. Always be planning and thinking, but not always be pushing. However, to set the stage, came off of a challenge, right? A 7-day master your fasting challenge. The next one we have coming up is the second week, just after the 4th of July week. So coming up in the second week of July, I almost said June. And then, with a couple of weeks of coaching, had lost over 10 pounds, close to 12 pounds, I believe. It's definitely over 10. I can't remember the exact number now that I'm thinking about it in real time.
Yeah.
And has a workshop trip coming up in the next week. And the setting of the stage, and this can go for any family vacation, any wedding, any honeymoon, any graduation, any sending your kids off to school, any college trips, any grandparent, vacations, whatever it is, work trips. Here's the stage. On these trips, I don't get to choose most of my meals and end up eating croissants, burgers by the third or fourth day due to exhaustion. Ooh.
Yep.
Lack of sleep, etc. Can I have some tips on how to make smart decisions, even physically when I can't seem to, of not getting back on a fasting schedule, or back on track ASAP when I get back?
Yeah. Wow. A lot of layers there,
right?
Because you have a lot of things that are outside of your control, and feeling out of control leads to higher stress, lower dopamine and serotonin, which means there's an easy go-to there, which would be bringing in food. Like it's a very natural way to kind of refill those buckets, if you will. So taking little times where you can control what you can control, having a few little windows here and there, even just a few minutes for yourself to kind of regroup. And, hey, like Brian asked about, mantras and meditations and other routines and things like that. But even just setting a timer for 5 minutes and just getting the heck out of Dodge, just like walking out of the seminar or the conference room for a few minutes and just taking a little walk where you're just kind of clearing your mind, is something where if I go to one of these kind of things, I'll do it. But I didn't used to be the guy who would do it. I would just say, no, I see some people getting up and walking around, but I'd rather just kind of, take part and socialize and not like leave the room. But it's huge as far as, kind of refueling and regrouping. And that's going to lead to less of those feelings of being out of control and feeling like I need to bring something in food wise, because you can absolutely stick to a really, really good fast during times like this. And, it doesn't have to feel white knuckling, but it does take some deliberate intention and a plan going into it.
So there's a few things that really stood out in this conversation. So I was like, all right, describe it to me. Like what happens, right? And what came out of this was fear of not being part of the crowd, fear of not thinking that you have the ability to fast on these trips, right? Because of the energy demands, and the realization that your environment doesn't have to dictate your results. So, Tommy, I don't want to forget these points, because the fear here is I don't get to choose most of my meals. So, okay, we need to plan to have some healthy snacks and some fuel for you. But my question was, why can't you fast, right? You're now adopting a fasting lifestyle. You've lost 10 pounds. Your energy's better. Your sleep's better. So why would we worry about exhaustion on day 3 or day 4 because of the lack of sleep? Why would we create a more complex problem and give in to the foods that are only going to make that worse? So the problem is lack of sleep, right? Because of this trip. So why then make poor decisions to make that problem worse? Well, the lack of sleep is the issue. So food's not going to fix it.
Right.
So know that that's a normal physiological thing that happens when your sleep goes down, right? Well, how do you focus on hydration, trace minerals, and knowing that if you stick with your fasting windows and make better food decisions, you're going to have more energy. So before this trip, right? This has never been accomplished by this person. She's never been able to go on this trip with this fasting skill set. So all she has is the framework of failure in the past.
Sure.
So it's like, okay, well, know that you can do it because you've been doing it. We just need to plan a little bit different. The second thing that came up was the fact that the peer group is, I asked this question, on when this question was submitted, right? Because it was inside of our coaching group. I said, okay, look around your group of people that are on this trip with you. Are they healthy? Do they live a healthy lifestyle? She's like, no. I'm like, then why would you want to do what they do? like they don't get a vote.
Yeah,
They
their
don't
vote
get a seat at the
stays.
table.
Right. They're not on your board, on your board of trustees.
But there was almost like a level of peer pressure. I'll call it
Mm,
adult peer pressure. I don't want to call it teasing or bullying, but adult peer pressure.
yeah.
I was like, oh, by day 3 or 4, you're going to give in. You'll have the cake. So I was like, you know what? In my brash approach to things like this, I'd be like, you don't get a vote. I'd show up with a giant sheet cake on day 1 and like start handing it out to
Hand it out.
people
Yeah.
and eat a piece with them and be like, all right, I'm done with cake for the week. Can we move on to why we're here?
Right.
Now, I'm much more of a I like confrontation. I'm an Enneagram 8. I don't typically get angry or dislike the person in front of me, but I'm also going to set my boundaries and be like, no, we're not doing this people pleasing crap.
Mm,
You do you, I'll do me.
sure.
Right. But there's also this fear of not being a part of the group. And that is so true in the social circles of what we find, right? With this weight loss journey and this health journey.
Oh, 100%. Because almost everybody has some pounds that they would love to lose, and almost everybody is having trouble with those pounds. So, when we're habits, we're creature of habits, and we also have a fear of the unknown too. So,
Right.
if somebody else is not getting the results, and maybe they're scared to try what you're doing, or maybe they're jealous of the results, or maybe they could even be just pressing like, hey, if that were me and I was trying that method, I think this is where I would give in. And they're pushing to see if that's accurate. They want to see it reflected in your behaviors. So you can show them that yes, they are correct right there, or you can show them that no, your method has more resiliency and you're able to flex more resiliency than they're prejudging you for, right? And so you have an opportunity in that moment to show off some of your fasting skills and some of your newfound confidence, and that can be
lead by example.
Yeah, lead by example, right? Absolutely. And I totally get it that can be fear inducing, almost like public speaking or something else like that.
If it's the first time you've done it.
For sure. It can be 100% uncomfortable. Like, this is the first time I'm in this situation, and I almost feel like the limelight, the spotlight's on me because maybe I have some of the best results in the room, or I'm doing the most interesting thing that everybody kind of
or
wants
I'm
to
the
do.
only one doing something different.
Yeah.
Crabs in a bucket.
Yeah. So I get it. It can be rough, but this is also why the first rule of fasting is don't talk about fasting, especially when you find yourself, going towards a situation where you would be uncomfortable talking about it, or you're not ready to kind of explain it or whatever. And not that you need to, you don't ever need to, but at the same time, you might want to at some point. But if now is not the time, then great. Then don't talk about it. Don't bring it up.
I said a couple of things too, tactically, make sure you've got snacks. Like, so there's this thing about where they stay, the hotel breakfast usually just have a lot of foods that aren't great choices. It's more of like high carb, sugary stuff for breakfast, right?
Danishes and stuff like that.
And I said, well, if you want to fast through breakfast and bring your healthy food with you, then get down and eat before they eat. Mm-hmm. Control your environment. Or come down at the last minute and people are like, oh, we got to get on the bus, right? Or we got to get to the seminar, or we got to check in, or the wedding photos or whatever it is. You can be like, oh, you know what? I got up super early and came down and ate already. I'm not hungry. Like, you literally just, like, if you're going to lie to yourself about not eventually giving in, then let's shift the white lie to be like, well, you don't get a vote, so go away. Like, nothing to see here. I'm not hungry. Oh, I already came down earlier and ate. I guess I've got snacks with me. I'll be fine. I'm not hungry right now.
Yeah. I'll be fine.
You know what I mean? I'll be fine. No, I'm good. Not hungry at the moment. I got stuff with me. I'll be all right. Right. Nobody cares. Right. They're going to think about themselves and shift the focus back to them once the trip gets moving along.
About it.
No, it's fine. So, and if you show any cracks, right, then they're going to get in. So just low key. Nope, I'm good. Thanks. Nope, I already came down and ate. I went for a morning walk this morning. I'm not hungry. Like, whatever it is, just diffuse it right there, because then they don't have anything to stand on, right?
Yeah.
I think about Eminem back in the day, like the 8 Mile soundtrack, right? Where he flips the hip hop world on its head. Did not think this was going to come up today. Where he in the final scene, it's one of the most powerful. It sticks with me to this day, where he like flips the script on the battle rapper that he's going against.
Okay.
And I'm separating the art from the artist here. I don't know if Eminem's been canceled or if he's in trouble right now. I don't know. Okay. I'm just saying,
All right.
back when 8 Mile was accepted, if it's, I don't know, is he literally took all of the ammo from his battle partner for the hip hop battle and literally just like self-deprecated himself. And then the guy was like, well, now I got nothing to get you on. So when we're looking at this, this conversation about, so I want to say one last thing as we wrap up is this last piece about getting back on track when you get back. The decisions you make during that are going to result in more blood sugar imbalances, more tired, more fatigued. When you get back, if you do this throughout the trip, then you are going to be kicking the can down the road, and you're going to have a more complex problem. So what does it look like for success when you get back from the wedding, the trip, the vacation, the business, whatever it is? What does success look like to you? And then reverse engineer it from there. Because if not, you're going to be constantly spinning your wheels.
I love that. And what if you were planning for that trip to be well controlled as far as your fasting? Not that you have to necessarily do a longer fast during this trip, but what if your fasting windows were clean and most of your food choices were really good and intentional, and your energy levels were higher because of that, because of less of those blood sugar and insulin swings that you just mentioned? And then what if you got to leave with a higher level of impact than you ever have before when you went to one of these things, because your energy's up? Maybe you found a few extra hours and were able to, contribute in a new way, in a way that you haven't been able to before. Like, how cool would that be to show up differently at one of these kind of events because you're willing to do things a little bit differently? And that's some of the power of fasting, but not only of fasting, but also just kind of adopting these tools into your lifestyle in a way that allows you to just show up a little bit differently.
Yep, absolutely. Love it. So great questions. Appreciate y'all listening. If you want to take an action, head to the show notes, click the link, join the Facebook community, right, of like-minded individuals. Control your environment, right? Come hang out. We talk about fasting 24/7. Sign up for the next challenge. Head to the show notes. Click the blueprint to fasting for fat loss. Think about these questions that were submitted in the areas of your life where they apply. Pick one thing, go do it. Adopt a fasting lifestyle, Tommy. As always, man, I appreciate the conversation, sir, and we will talk to you next week.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.